Roberto Marquez. In this video, I demonstrate an epic story for evaluating Apache natural language processing APIs. Tools and prerequisites include the following. Like I mentioned, it uses the Apache NLP API to evaluate text in an interview format. Dependency information is available in the POM. The trained model locations are listed in the resources directory, and I'll show those very briefly here in this window. Is the Maven dependency, and these two URLs are where the trained models were downloaded. The NetBeans IDE was used to develop the software. Other Java technologies used include Google Custom Search, and I'll show the Java file that contains links and a bit of instructions on how to set up a properties file to use your developer API key. Glassfish Jersey Client API was used to interact with the On This Day REST service from byabe.net. And iText APIs were used to generate PDF format reports of the interview. So this is the file here that contains links to obtaining your own Google Custom Search API, Google Custom Search.java in this GitHub repository. And here are the links for the API key. You also need a CX key. And on this page here, yeah, that's it for that part. And I'll review the epic story next. And that's going to involve showing how if you ask a question, it recognizes that. I'll run through the command line version briefly and then go through several times with the desktop version and then point out a few things that I noticed while running it. So here's the epic story. As a natural language processing developer, I need an interview chatbot application that exercises the Apache NLP API so that I can evaluate its effectiveness. Acceptance criteria includes the following. All these stories are complete, and there's about 9 or 10 of them. And the first one, like I said, is if a user asks a question, we need to detect that so that they're not ignored and asking questions and there's no response given. And there's a user story for interview format that lists how a question will be asked, a user response will be recorded, and then some recommendations will be given based on the response. The name identification user story is about detecting people's names in the user responses. So like John, Mary, Jane are some examples. Language detection user story was created so that we can verify that they're speaking in the interview language that's currently English supported only. The recommendations are a way to bring in real-time online suggestions for the user's response. Here are some other things that we're trying to detect besides name, and another one is percentages, like if the percentage of a project or just a percentage in general. Money is another item, a named entity that this application detects. And so that'll be like, $, and then a numeric value. The same thing with dates. This is like month, day format, but it can be anywhere in the sentence. So that's what it's detecting there. And location, and that's more so like names of cities or states than I'm next door or I'm on the top bed or something like that. And then there's 2 user stories that aren't directly related to natural language processing, and one is to generate a report of the interview, and this one right here is a housekeeping one just to verify that all user stories are complete. And in case you're interested, all user stories are documented here under this documents directory. And so dates, the epic, the Google search, name, money, language detection, percentage, the report, sentences. So now let's run the application on the command line one time so you can get a feel for what's going on in the background, and then we'll do it on the desktop. So here I am in the directory where I've already cloned the project and built it using Maven. And here's the the executable jar file containing the application. And after a bit of print messages are scrolled on the screen, it'll ask the first question, which is, what is your name? And I'll type in a few positive, like things that I know it's going to detect, and then once we're in the GUI, I'll put things that I know it's not going to detect. So the first one, I'll just put my own name, Roberto, and it picked it up. Nice to meet you, Roberto. And how are you today? Fine, thanks. And then it gave a recommendation. So since I'm feeling okay, try getting fresh air. It'll make you feel better. And the next question is, what project are you working and what percentage is it complete? I am working on an Arduino project. It is 5% complete. Still got a ways to go. And it picked it up and gave some recommendations here. Yeah, here are the recommendations, and it says it must feel cool to be that much done. The next thing is, what is the budget for the project? And I'll type in that the budget is $55. And it gave some Arduino related recommendations for 55, namely going to the forum, but it's not a very good one. And then next is a date, and I'm going to just skip this one and show, because we can't really see the recommendations. I'm going to skip this one and go to the next one. And if you notice, if you type in a bad response, it'll say, hey, I'm not able to process your response. And after 2 of them, it'll let you know that it's not able to process your response and that it wants to move on with the interview. And the next question, I believe the last one, is, what is your favorite location? And I'm going to put London. And then it picked up the location as London as expected, and it says that it's nice to the application assumes that it's nice in London and gives 2 recommendations on what are the best things to do there. And the interview is complete after that. And this version doesn't give the report, but let's move on to the GUI where it does. So for that, I'm going to move to the NetBeans IDE where I have I already have it set up to run, and I'm just going to hit F6, and it'll bring up the application. You can see in this little window that it's doing the same thing on the command line and loading the trained models, and eventually it'll bring up a UI. And I'm going to go ahead and bring it up so we can see what's going on with that. And so the questions are the same, but this time we'll see recommendations on the right hand side, and it's given in a little more user-friendly chat-like interface. So my name is, I'll just go with a different name this time, like Mary. And it picked it up, so it's nice to meet me. How am I today? I'm going to put in a bad response and see what it says. So I'm going to say, or a negative response, I mean, and just say something like, I don't feel well. And it says I wasn't able to process. I expected it to pick that up, but for some reason it doesn't. So I'll try and give it a better one and say like, I feel, I'll type this one, fine, thanks. And so it picked up that, and you can tell that that it's glad to hear that, and you know, it gave that response of to get fresh air, to feel better, even better. And the next question again is, what project are you working and what percentage is it complete? And I'm going to say this time, I am making a basket. It is, oh, and I'll leave off the percentage. And it says it wasn't able to process, which makes sense because I didn't give a percent. And this time I'll say the same thing. I'm making a basket. It is at, let's say 56% done. And this time it did pick up. Oh, it didn't pick up that one. Oh, I put the percent in the wrong spot. I'll put it correctly next time. So I want to move on, and the next question is, what is your budget for the project? And I'll say the budget $45. And it picked up on that and gave some recommendations for flights, which kind of makes sense because it didn't have a good project, so it just searched for 45. And here it's asking for the date, and I'll say I like January 2nd. And okay, it is for January 2nd, and here's some things that happened on that date. At some point, I guess Pope John II did something on the 2nd. And here are some birthdays. Emperor Yozi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but apparently he was born on January 2nd, 949. And here we are again at the last question, which is, what's your favorite location? Last time I said London. This time around I'll say San Antonio. And for San Antonio, you know, same thing. Here's it's nice, and here are some recommendations. Oh, here actually the interview is over, and here is the report on the right hand side. So it kept track of everything, like what's your name, how am I doing, and then this one here's the percentage that it didn't give it couldn't pick it up because I had the percentage in the wrong format, so there's no valid answer given on that question. It remembers a 45. And then for San Antonio, or here's January 2nd recommendations, and here's San Antonio as my favorite location, and some things to do there. If you click this button, it'll show the report in the browser and give you a chance to download it as a HTML or PDF. So I'll run it one more time just to get a feel for, you know, what it can pick up and what it can't pick up. And that's F6 in NetBeans. And here we are again. This time I'll open the window just a bit so we can see more of it. And this time I'll give it a name that it can't detect, like maybe Jesus. It says it wasn't able to process what's your name. Maybe if I give it a different name, like let's say Jim, and it's okay, nice to meet you, Jim, how are you today? And I'll put, you know, something that's gibberish, and it'll detect that you know, it's not able to process. And how are you today? And I'll try and get a negative response in there and say I don't feel well. And it still couldn't pick that up. The model needs more training, I guess. And then here are, what project are you working on? This time I'll say a painting that is 100% done. This time I've correctly formatted the percent. And here are some here's a response that it must feel good to be 100% done, and it gives some search results on a painting being 100% done. And again, here we are with the how much is your budget for the project. I'll put in a bad value, like say $5, and it shouldn't find this, or it should find it, but it's not formatted correctly. It's not able to process that, so I'll say something like something with maybe a comma, which it should pick up. It was just 1,000, and it sure did. Noted that there's a $1,000 budget. And for a month and a day, I'll try something a little more complicated, like not complicated, but with more text in it. I really like, let's say May 10th as a day. And so here are some, yeah, I picked up May 10th, and here are some things that happened on May 10th. Apparently, Siege of Jerusalem was on the 70th year AD. These are some really old entries. And here's the last question again. What is your favorite location? This time I'll say maybe China. And let's see. Yeah, I hear it's nice in China. And then the interview's over. And thanks for participating. Here is a message that it gives at the end. And here's the report with all the answers. See, this time it didn't pick up that I was good or bad, so it just said no valid answer. And there's a 100% project with recommendations. The budget of $1,000, and here it gives recommendations based on that. And what day and month do you like? Let's see what we have. Oh, that's right, it gave sunspots. Favorite location of China. Here's some recommendations for that. So as you can see, it's able to pick up most of the things that I thought it would. And overall, I'd say that the API works better than good. And I was able to train the sentiment model to pick up affirmative responses that weren't initially recognized in the default model. And there were some few things that did surprise me, like false negatives. So it could pick up the name Jose, but not Jesus. And for sentiment, it would pick up fine, thank you, but whenever I would enter I am good, it didn't pick that up as a positive response. And the dates, like April 2, were picked up just fine, but if I put in April 2nd, like ND, 2ND, it wouldn't pick that up as a date as expected. Another one that surprised me was that San Antonio was accepted as a location, and Austin, Texas was accepted as a location, but a location like just Austin without the state didn't get picked up. Besides the sentiment model, I didn't go into retraining any models, but it's good to know that Apache provides tools and documentation on how to retrain models for a given domain. So if you need to add words or locations names, you can do that with their tools. And the main benefit I see for this and other API, natural language processing APIs, is not having to enumerate all the different conditionals that it would take to pick up natural language responses. That would be a lot of if-else's to try and pick up how a user can put in a percentage or name or location anywhere in a given text input. So it was really exciting to use the NLP API from Apache, and I plan to explore this area more. Hopefully you enjoyed the demonstration, and I encourage you to explore the topics presented in this video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more natural language processing content.